Welcome back, everyone. It's been about a week overdue for this, and my apologies. There has been so much going on. It just seems like I get rid, get through a venue, or I get through an event, and then something else pops up in between. But anyways, here I am. Um, Today's episode is about language, how our language that we use determines a lot of the taboos that we have in regards to so many um, ideas and concepts. But this one is going to be specifically about the language and how we use it in defining and talking about death in this country. And language is an amazing thing. It has the capacity to inspire and lift us up. It has the capacity to engage us and bring us into new ideas and concepts. And it also has the capability to shame and bully and defile. It has the capacity to harm and hurt and stigmatize. And we don't always really take into consideration how much language plays a part in how we define our culture and certain items in our culture. And death is something that, is just a clenching of the fist and the jaw kind of conversation. And everybody's like, oh my God, do we have to have this? Do we have to talk about it? Yeah, why not? It's a shame that you are clenching your fists and you are clenching your jaws and you're shaking your head and you're looking down and you feel such a burden, a fear, just an awful, awful cloud comes over when death happens. And first of all, I don't understand exactly from the way I was brought up how this entailed, but as I continue to talk to people and do my events and reach out, I am beginning to see all the ways that language and actions were taken when people were smaller and growing up, and death happened to whoosh through their house or maybe through their grade school or maybe high school and college. I find that there's always been one particular death, or maybe it was the only death they ever encountered. But language is so important. The language that I find that most of us use when it comes to death is completely opposite of what we use to define life and birth. And so I think that's where we get that yin and yang from. We aspire to and we look up to life coming in and all the prospect and everything. And somehow we have used the language that, oh, it's terminal, it's the end, it's the finality of it all. Well, yes, it is. But not only is it language, it's tone. Um, Life is about death, and death is life. You can't have one without the other. And I fail to see how we have such a spectrum difference in how each of them play out in our culture. Um, there are things that just don't make sense to me. Death is usually associated with medical and only medical, your terminal illness, your treatment, your, all the stuff and just the tearing down and the basic body breakdown. But we also fail to teach beforehand that the basic breakdown of the body is going to happen inevitably. And we fail to introduce this, and we fail to speak in languages that want to embrace people to want to know about it, not run and hide in their freaking closet or go to Disneyland when their grandma dies because they can't handle it. I notice certain language that is used when some people talk to me about death. They talk in terms of how it's, always such a long, drawn out process, and that it's the only way to go is hospice, and hospice is either at home or it's in your medical institution. And again, everything around death is centered about a negative and a totally tiny little narrow view of what death is. Death is your last moment on stage. This is your grand finale, and it should be treated as such. It should be spoken as such. There shouldn't be words like assisted suicide. Seriously? This is 2024. Are you kidding me with that kind of language? There is nothing assisted suicide even closely resembles the word dying with dignity or medical aid in dying. And to use that kind of language when we're introducing new concepts and when we're introducing new ideas that should be uplifting and riveting and interesting, and gee, I want to find out about these things. Nah, we're going to tag it with an assisted suicide. We're going to give you the language and the tone that, oh, this is a bad, bad thing. It just blows my mind that we are at such odds when it comes to something that is inevitably going to happen to everyone, regardless. And two, it's the second most important thing that's going to ever happen to you in your entire existence in this time and place. The first is you're going to be born. The second is you're going to die. What you do in between there is just the toppings of a sundae. Some people are only going to put chocolate on it. Some people may put every flavor in the rainbow on it. And so that's a beautiful sentiment. And you have life as a beautiful sentiment. But then when we get done with the sundae, we're left with like the leftovers of a carcass when it comes to death. And again, I'm using this language so that you can see how it takes from going to inspiration to a very negative and almost diabolical, evil concept. When I talk about death, I don't talk about it as a ending. I talk about it as a finish line for a couple things. One, the finish line is that you got there. You're there. And how you're going to cross the line or crossover or whatever it is that you and your ideology tells is going to happen, that's not my gig. So you're coming down the finish line, man, and you're stroking it. And you got there. And now you are deciding, man, this is my last run. This is my last, bit on stage, or this is my last moment where I can actually be aware and make a decision of how I'm going to cross that finish line. And it's these ideas and concepts that we're coming up with now that, yes, they're in almost complete contrast to hospice. But it should be. The fact that hospice is basically the only way that we have to choose to go out crossing that line is, well, medieval. And it's not very progressive. It's like a stagnant old pond that's just smelly and gross and has foam growing all over it. Again, you notice my language? It has built a picture in your head. So it's not that I'm trying to turn hospice into a negative thing. I am exploring to you how, when I use language, it totally changes the perspective, the tone, the vibration of the subject matter that you're speaking about. There is nothing wrong with hospice. Hospice was born and created and bred out of absolute love for someone, somehow, some way. And what it has evolved into over the years is progression of our society. But we've only progressed in the hospice area. We haven't opened up yet to new ideas, to new concepts, to new avenues. The largest population that this country has ever had is coming to fruition. We're dying in large numbers. And it comes at a time when our medical facilities are having a tough time. They're struggling. We have staffing issues. We have medication issues. There's just a lot of chaos in a framework that for years has given people solace and calmness and sort of a lane for when it comes to them coming up to the finish line. There's nothing wrong with that, other than it's overcrowded now. Other than there are now new people that are coming up to that line and going, yeah, we don't want to be in this lane. We don't want to cross over this way. We like this avenue over here. We're going to go run this marathon on this side because we like what their finish line offers more than what yours does. And there's nothing wrong with that. There should always be a choice in this country, always, even in death. If I so choose to want to go out THC blasted and riding a psilocybin ride and then drinking my medical aid and dying, then more power to me. I'm leaving a legacy. I'm leaving my autonomy. I am leaving a experience. I'm leaving a marker I'm opening up a new lane on that marathon that you can finish like this. You can cross over and from there, whatever. For me, it's just returning to where I came before I landed in this place. I don't have any big philosophical or esoteric. It's, this is the philosophical part. This is the part where I get to come on a podcast and be philosophical and be logistic and be practical and all that. So this is the part that I engage in. This is the part where I use language. And when we talk about death, it should just naturally come about as easily as, oh, did you hear that Sister Grace is pregnant with her third child? Wow, wonderful. Oh, man. Did you also hear that Paul over on 4th Street has stage 4 pancreatic cancer? Man, that's tough. Is there anything how can we help? Does he have a death plan? Is his family taken care of? Does he have respite care? Has he we should be in lifting this up. We should be giving resources to make sure that whatever his death plan he has written out is followed precisely. If he is unable to do it, then there should be people who will step up and say, no, this goes forward. This is the language he used. This is how he's finishing this race. This is how he's going to take his final bow. And there shouldn't be in this time and age where it's a bullying and a shaming or a religious preference, because truthfully, not all of us are religious, folks. I have nothing against religion. I In my childhood, with some of my stepdads that I was with, I got to experience many of the religions we have here in this country. And they were good stories, and I met some nice people, but it never drew me as to this entity that's going to guide my life and make me make choices. And if I screw up, yes, he will be kind. Or it just, like I said, it was a really good story, and I'm a writer. I love my stories, but it just kind of fell into the realm of, a Grimm's fairy tale or Cinderella. Or, and again, this is all language. It showed me there were morals and values in the story. It, gave me and that's basically what stories do. But when it comes to death, even in the stories, there are languages that are used that make it such a dark and dreary and just an abyss of an ending. And I, by no means am I saying that death does not bring sadness, and it does bring grief of all types. But it is not the person who's dead that is experiencing that. It's the living that are left over that have to go through it. When we talk about death and a death plan, I understand that we throw the families and all the loved ones in and the friends. But for a moment, let's just stick with the language about the dying person, the person who's only here for X amount of time. And then when they're dead, they don't care. There's no existential reach out that they're, everything that happens after they take their last breath is now for the remaining members of the dying person, their people. And again, that's a whole new language. And I'm not talking about that particular language. This is in direct relation to the person who is going to die. The most important one. Not that I have anything, I'm not putting the family and the loved ones and everything out of the picture. I'm just saying, for now, you're the passengers on the ride. Once the ride is over and your family or friend or person has died, now you take over the steering wheel. And again, notice the language that I use. Notice that when I talk about death, my concern is for the person who's dying. It is a choice that I think we forget that these people actually can make choices. They have made choices. They've written it down. And in some instances, people have done death drills. They want their death to go just this way, to the best in many scenarios. They don't want anyone to skip a beat. One of the languages I hear a lot too is with first responders. When someone says, no, I don't want to be saved, I have a do not resuscitate or something like that, the first thing that a first responder does, and again, I understand your job is to do the best of your ability to save this person's life. But when the person is the person dying and they say, I do not have a do not resuscitate, and you come back and say, well, sir, we're going to have to take vitals, or you understand that you are now using language that negates the dying person here, the person who is in crisis. You are negating the language that they wrote down, the language that they just spoke to you. Listen carefully, because the one thing that I have found most profoundly when I have been with the terminally ill and those that are just about ready to go out of this place, the last thing they want more than anything is to be heard, is to be listened to, and to follow their instructions to a T. It's their final rodeo. They want to hold on the full 8 seconds, and they need you to do this. Again, I'm using my language here. When I talk to people about death and when I stand in front of the people and I look around, I smile when I talk about death. I smile at the ways that we can move forward, at the new options that we can come up with. I smile at the fact that some of these concepts and options, they are way less draining on the insurance companies. They're way less draining on the medical community that's already struggling. And all these are new open avenue ideas. And I am delighted and I am honored to be of service in implementing any one of these. I am a huge advocate, as many of you know, of euthanasia. I have a cat and she's very old and she's having some issues. She's got an open wound that just won't seem to heal. And as a death walker, I can already kind of feel what choices and decisions, I'm going to have to make. And I can't wait to let my vet know that we're going to do euthanasia. And I'm going to get her bed ready. And I'm going to pick a date and a time, because if she could pick a date and a time, I would gladly let my cat Voodoo do it, but she can't. So I'll do it. And she will be in our arms. She will be in her favorite bed. She will have everyone around her. And we will give her a shot. And in my language of love for death, she will peacefully die in my arms in a very short amount of time with dignity and an autonomy that goes with that. And I wish that for every human being as well. I wish all that for every human being on this planet that chooses to have it that way. And for those of you that will follow the traditional hospice, whether it's at home or in the hospital, I honor you and I respect that. I would just remind people that this is a big, big, big melting pot of people, and there are so many different perspectives, and there should be choices. There should be as many choices, ideas, and concepts as there are dying people. Well, on that, I'll close. I had a little bit more to go into. I was going to talk a little bit more about, how people are choosing different options. I think I'll save that one for next time. I'm going to bow out gracefully and to end this with the simplest language that I can. Death talk to everyone. Talk about it. Inspire people. Lift people up about it. Get people to see an open and honest side of dying, because there are so many. And feel free, if you ever need to reach out and talk to me or whatever, just send me a message. I usually check them here. You can find me on Facebook, Paula Adams. You can find me on Instagram, Dying on Your Own Terms. If you look hard enough in Google, you'll find me. And it'll meant to be, if that's what's, and again, that's my language. It's meant to be. So take care, everyone. Have a super, super week. I'll see you in about 10 more days with another one. It's been fun.